Hey, folks, good morning. Well, I'm coming to you from the paradise that is the Permian Basin this week. Yep, I'm back to executing and closing out this year's consulting contract with the client. It's been a couple of months out of the saddle for me, as the recurring listeners may know. I'll be spending a few days here in Midland, Texas, in a classroom environment before I head back over to Carlsbad, New Mexico, and engage in some field work with some of the client's small teams out there in what they call the oil patch. It will be a refreshing change from the events of the past few weeks. Don't get me wrong, I did and I really do enjoy spending time with the family and spending time with family and friends over the Thanksgiving holiday. What will be refreshing though is getting busy again and not dealing with the family and travel agency drama as well as the loss of a loved one. Also, I will be missing out on my bride's annual Christmas cookie baking extravaganza. Hundreds of cookies will be baked and passed out to family, friends, neighbors, and the church family. I usually am the one that makes the deliveries, but she'll have to handle that on her own this year. Of course, she'll have our daughter as her helper again. There's a bright side to this, though. I won't be able to eat as much of these cookies as I normally do, although I'm sure she'll save me some of my favorites when I get home. The drama with the travel agency continues with a barely acceptable resolution at this point. It's actually a two-for resolution that Denise came up with. The family and I had until today to make a decision on which option we will exercise of those three options we talked about last week. Now, giving the 70 plus travelers only 2 weeks to make a decision of this magnitude is arbitrary and capricious, in my opinion. But as I mentioned last week, Nawas International has placed us all in a hostage situation with our money because they are not offering refunds. Denise and I are leaning towards option one discussed last week and something extra after we confirmed that it was a mistake to not list the canceled November 2023 trip as being eligible to take that option. The liaison from our church confirmed that in a phone call. All in all, folks, going forward, I do not recommend using Nawas International for any group or individual travel. And once we are completed with this snafu, I do not believe Denise and I will voluntarily use this company again. This company has terrible reviews all over the internet, which I mentioned before, and I only became aware of because of this situation. Your church group has many other options to choose from for pilgrimages, and I highly recommend all involved to do some comparison shopping. Also, if you are purchasing travel insurance for excursions such as these, make sure you investigate the cancel for any reason option as part of your plan. Now, to some, it may be too expensive, but hey, it is definitely an option to check out. That would have saved a lot of headache as well as overcome the very fine print exclusions in Nawas's travel brochure, which is only available online, by the way, and not provided to the travelers in hard copy. Lessons learned all the way around. I also want to thank the listeners and viewers for their feedback on last week's episode. It seems there were some problems with the sound and speed of the playback at certain points during the episode. I'm investigating if that was an upload error or a technical mistake on my part or an editing error. Once I get it all sorted out, I will re-release the episode again. Now, as I mentioned last week, in this week's show, I will break down and give my personal thoughts on the bill Senator Janice Bowling and I discussed a few episodes back, and that bill is titled Restoring State Sovereignty Through Nullification Act. The bill, which is supposed to be reintroduced in next month's regular session of the Tennessee General Assembly, is a work of art in my mind, and for several reasons. Now, with that being said, let's get on with the program. Welcome to a show where we will discuss how the citizens of this republic must continuously fight to maintain our liberty, and those fights are increasingly against our own government. Some of the episodes on liberty will shine a light on exactly how all levels of government are seeking to erode our constitutionally protected rights. We will also discuss the leadership needed to restore our constitutional republic, as well as providing examples of good and bad people in leadership positions in all facets of our society. Additionally, we will discuss the lies the people in positions of power and influence spread every day
so they can maintain those same positions. I'm your host, Larry Linton, retired U.S. Navy veteran, small business owner, and candidate for the Tennessee House of Representatives, and this is the Liberty, Leadership, and Lies podcast.
Again, welcome to this week's show, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be doing something different on this week's episode that I have not yet done before. I will actually be showing the text of Senator Bowling's and Representative Hulsey's bill on the screen with you. If you are listening to the audio-only version of the show, please be sure and check out the video versions on YouTube or Rumble. No matter where you listen or watch the episode, though, I would like to ask that you give it a like or a thumbs up. If you could, please give the show a review on Spotify and Apple if you're listening to it on those programs. You want to know something strange, though? I was resistant to putting the show on TikTok for the longest time. I know. TikTok is a Chinese-run program, and that made me leery of using it for a couple of years now. Now, that shouldn't be strange to most of you listeners. After all, you cannot trust the Chinese at all. However, I could expose them to facts and truth about our constitutional republic and inform the audience about ways in which we can restore this grand experiment in self-governance back to its foundations. What is strange, though, is that the viewership on TikTok is outpacing all the other platforms, and by a large margin. I don't know if that is a function of different algorithms or just the popularity of TikTok with many more users. Nonetheless, I'm going to take advantage of it. So if you're watching these episode segments on TikTok, please give each one a like and even comment on them. You can even share them right on your own feed. Now, though, the screen share of this text of this bill might be a bit small to watch on your smartphone if you're watching this on TikTok. If that is the case, there's always the Rumble option. Just saying. Also, I want to remind the audience that I do not make a dime from this podcast. At least I don't anymore. No advertisers, no financial supporters. It is a passion, or more like a calling for me. I believe that this is very important to the cause of liberty. Now, that being said, as most of you know, I had Senator Janice Bowling, the Iron Lady of the Tennessee Senate, on the program a couple of weeks ago to talk about this bill. I also sent an invitation out to Representative Bud Hulsey to come on the program and talk about what his efforts to get this passed in the House of Representatives will be this upcoming regular session. For the information of my fellow Tennesseans, the regular session of the General Assembly will convene on the 9th of January. It always starts on the second Tuesday of January each year. It will most likely conclude business and adjourn sometime in April. I provide that information so that everybody can follow legislation that is being proposed and considered during this legislative session. We have to keep an eye out for any of the garbage that was proposed or being considered during the special session earlier this year, and we have to regularly communicate with our elected members of the General Assembly. Of course, my consulting work will have me out of town on that day it convenes, and that'll be after a quick turnaround from this current engagement. I will only be home for 2 weeks when I come home from this event, and then it's back to the Permian Basin. I also have some more work scheduled for East Texas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma over the next 6 months or so. Oh, that reminds me. I will be home for the upcoming second annual East Tennessee Grassroots Leadership Summit that is being hosted by the wonderful group of patriots over at Empowered Severe. There is an impressive lineup of speakers once again. Gary Humble from Tennessee Stands, State Representative Brian Ritchie, State Senator Frank Nicely, Nicole Hirschberger from Turning Point USA, Andrea Gomez from Citizens Renewing America, Andy Darlington from Christian Educators Association, Kathy Harms from Tennessee Fair Elections Coalition, Bernadette Pager from Children's Health Defense, Dr. Denise Sibley, the founder of and one of the foremost members of Tennessee Freedom Doctors, Alexis Brown, a citizen lobbyist against corruption in the Tennessee government, and the incomparable Pastor Keith Nix from the Lift Church here in Sevierville. Registration for the event is filling up fast, so if you live here or anywhere near Sevier County, you should make plans to attend this event. It is scheduled for Saturday, the 6th of January at the Sevierville Civic Center. It's an all-day event, but no worries. The summit is being catered by Holy Smokes Barbecue. Lunch and snacks throughout the day are included in the ticket price. You can find Empowered Severe on Facebook and contact the group to arrange to get your tickets. The inaugural event in January of this year was incredible, and this next one is shaping up to be even better. So come on out and arm yourself with knowledge and make connections with other like-minded patriots that are working to ensure accountability at the state level of our government. Some more important dates to keep in mind for the upcoming year are these. And of course, they have to deal with the upcoming elections. The first opportunity to cast a vote in 2024 will be in the presidential preference primary. The date for that primary is Tuesday, the 5th of March, but early voting for that primary will be from Saturday, February 17th through Saturday, the 24th of February. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of voting in that primary election. Regardless if President Trump is leading the field in the GOP primary and will run away with this primary here in Sevier County, you must, I say again, must vote in this primary, or you run the risk of forfeiting your bona fide status as a member of the state GOP, which means that you will not be able to participate in the biannual Republican Party reorganization or be considered eligible to run for public office as a Republican here in Tennessee. Make plans now to vote in that election or during one of the early voting days I just mentioned. While I do not agree with the early voting at all, it is something we must use. I worked for an admiral once who told me we go to war with the Navy we have, not the Navy we want or the Navy we need. We must deal with the decisions that were made in the past until we can modify or completely change those prior bad decisions. So, early voting, it is the Navy we all have right now, and we must fight with what is available to us. That applies until we can get rid of that unconstitutional, liberty-eroding system of implementing tyranny. We must use it to our advantage. In order to vote in the presidential preference primary, you must ensure that you are registered to vote. The deadline for that registration is Monday, February 5th. If you will not be available locally on election day, the deadline to request an absentee ballot is Tuesday, February 27th. If you are unsure about any of these dates or the requirements, do not hesitate to contact your local county election commission. I'm going to take a quick break here and come back on the other side with some more dates and then start breaking down this important piece of legislation. With that, I'll be right back. And we're back from that quick break. As I stated in the previous segment, I cannot state this enough about every primary election here in the state of Tennessee. You must vote in each and every one of them if you want to be able to participate in Republican Party leadership or even run for office. That is a requirement built into the Tennessee Republican Party bylaws. And you do not want to provide the so-called powers that be, whether they are a good old boy network in your county GOP or even the rhinos that have taken over many county Republican Party organizations, or maybe even the many trans-publicans that are currently serving in leadership positions in our General Assembly. You do not want to provide them with any ammunition that would enable them to disqualify you from serving. What is ironic with the Tennessee Republican Party bylaws is that the stated reason for having the bona fide requirements is to keep the communists from infiltrating the Republican Party and winning some elections. It is ironic because those bylaws have only kept the trans-publicans in power and prevented conservative Republicans from running for office or county GOP leadership positions. Maybe it is an irony, but on purpose. You all know which way I lean there, right? Because I am the perfect case in point for how the bylaws prevented a conservative Republican from running for statewide office as a member of the GOP, as well as running for a county GOP leadership position. In this case, don't be like me in that situation. But keep in mind, It was elected Republicans in the General Assembly that killed legislation on multiple occasions that would have closed primaries in this state. Closing primaries will prevent the commies from voting in GOP primaries. Gee, I wonder why there is a disconnect. Well, not really, because we all know the why. Anyway, vote in every primary and general election. The next dates to keep in mind are the ones for the state and federal primaries, as well as the countywide elections. The date for those elections is Thursday, August 1st. Early voting for that election will run from Friday, the 2nd of July through Saturday, the 27th of July. The deadline to ensure you are registered to vote for those elections is Tuesday, July 2nd. The deadline to request an absentee ballot is Thursday, July 25th. Next up is the big one for everybody in the audience, the November 2024 state and federal general election. That will be held on Tuesday, the 5th of November. To be able to vote in this election in this state, the deadline to ensure you are registered to vote is Monday, October 7th. Early voting here in Tennessee will be held from Wednesday, the 6th of October through Thursday, the 31st of October. An important date in the election cycle for myself is this, Monday, February 5th. That is the day that I could pick up my petition to get on the ballot for the August 1st primary. Now, sadly, I will be out of town for that date, but will return to Tennessee not too many days later. I have until noon on Thursday, the 4th of April, to turn in my petition with the required number of signatures. That should not be a problem. It wasn't last time. If you live here in the 12th Tennessee House District, you may be receiving a visit from me shortly. In fact, if you're a resident of Sevier County and would like to set up a time where we can talk about the required course correction I believe our General Assembly needs, send me an email and let's work together to arrange that meeting. To reach me here at the show, the email address is larry@libertyleadershipandlies.com. Again, that is larry@libertyleadershipandlies.com. Well, enough about the election cycle key dates for now. Let's get into Senator Bowling and Representative Halsey's proposed legislation. Again, the bill was titled Restoring State Sovereignty Through Nullification Act. I will put it on the screen and start going through it. Just give me a quick second here. And here it is. So here, the first thing I would like you to notice about this bill is Section 3. It's right here, starts here. It's where we start getting in the meat of the bill. It actually starts by citing the Constitution of the state of Tennessee, and specifically Articles 1, Sections 1 and 2. We've talked about them on this program quite a bit. Maybe, just maybe, by having it in this bill, that will force some members of the General Assembly to read both our state constitution and the U.S. Constitution. After all, they swear an oath to them, right? Then it moves into the federal Constitution, referring to the enumerated powers, another frequent topic of discussion on this podcast. You know, it's kind of embarrassing, in my opinion, that it takes a piece of legislation like this to remind people of what the document that forms our government has to be restated for them. And it should be. Well, it should be too. Let's scroll through some more of the opening text. It really gets into some elementary level education about our Constitution here with all these subparagraphs. You know, reading through it, it reminds me of that old, could be a literal extended version of that old Schoolhouse Rocks cartoon on how a bill becomes a law that many people my age saw on television growing up. If you notice, I highlighted subparagraph 8 here. That harkens back to an episode I did back in July of this year, where I discussed how if we started or forcing ourselves to live by the rulings and decision of the court system, the judicial branch, which does not have any law-making ability according to the Constitution, our republic will surely die by the rulings and decisions of the courts. When you get a chance, go back and listen to that episode again in context with this proposed piece of legislation. For far too long now, we've been forced to accept by the legislative and executive branches of the central government in DC. We've been forced to live by the decisions that come from the judicial branch, and we have elevated them to have the status of a law passed by the people's representatives. This has also applied these decisions, or they have also allowed these decisions to alter or appear to amend the Constitution without going through the constitutional amendment process. The same thinking and behavior has been applied to executive orders as well. When that happens, it is one branch assuming powers not delegated to it in the Constitution. It's amazing to me it has taken this long for state lawmakers to not only recognize this, but to take action to put the central government back within its constitutional limitations. After a quick break, we'll come back here and discuss what I believe to be one of the key facts pointed out in this bill, and it's in subparagraph 11. So I'll be right back after this brief pause. And we're back, folks. Give me a second here as I pull the bill back up. Right there it is. As I mentioned before the break, and it's highlighted in red here in subparagraph 11. The keywords and tricky phrase there, folks, do you see it? Vertical separation of powers between the superior sovereign states and the inferior federal government. Absolutely spot on facts there that the central government needs to be reminded of daily, if not hourly. It is my belief that if every elected official, as well as every judge at both the state and federal level, read this bill as well as attend a presentation by Attorney Jeff Cobble as he explains it. Last month was the third time I've heard Mr. Cobble speak, and it's definitely well worth the time spent and knowledge gained. But what is most striking with the knowledge gained is it's not in some mysterious location where you have to work hard to find it. It is the plain language of the Constitution and in the writings of the founding fathers. It's available for all of us to read and learn from. It's not very common knowledge now, and I believe that is one of the reasons that, and the reasons for that is that we allow the central government to take a leading role in the education of our children. We, the people, allowed them to usurp the rights of the states and the people in matters regarding education. After all, it was not an enumerated power the states gave the federal government in the Constitution. Yet here we are in the position where the central government controls what children in classrooms all over the country learn, as well as that same federal or central government punishing states that do not allow boys and girls bathrooms because they are suffering from some sort of mental illness brought on by a social contagion. I have said it before and will say it again until I'm blue in the face. The federal government has no constitutional authority to be involved in public education. And because we have allowed them to usurp that power, they have purposely not educated the children of this nation on the limitations put on the federal government by the Constitution. In subparagraph 14 of this bill right here, it questions whether this shift in jurisprudence or ignoring the vertical and horizontal separation of powers built into our Constitution was intentional or accidental. Ladies and gentlemen, with the plain language of the Constitution right in front of every elected official, as well as all of the writings of the founding fathers being available for them to read prior to considering any legislation, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the shift was completely intentional. Our republic was founded by a throwing off the yoke of tyranny. You cannot accidentally put that yoke back on after suffering the birth pains of our nation. It was most assuredly done on purpose. The particular language in this section is giving the tyrants an out, so to speak, a chance for them to say, oh, my bad, and get back to our founding principles. And my bad. If you served on active duty with me, you know that my bad was my second least favorite saying. My least favorite was when a sailor told me, "You see, Master Chief, what had happened was," and then out come the plethora of excuses. Anyway, folks, when the vertical and horizontal separation of powers was eroded, do not ever doubt that it was done on purpose. The bill goes on again at length to provide lawmakers in the General Assembly a rudimentary re-education on what not only both constitutions state, but also the words of the oath they swear when assuming elected office. Again, I believe they should be sad and embarrassed by by needing this to remind them of that. But we are where we are right now. Section 5, let's get down to that. 4. Here, Section 5 begins right here. Section 5 of this bill is great. It details how federal action is to be reviewed. And it all goes back to the contemporary writings of the Constitution's authors at the time that wonderful document was drafted. At no point does it mention any modern interpretations, especially those of the judicial branch. I would like to call your attention to subparagraph 9 or section 9, subparagraph 2. Let's get down to it. Again, I'm going to hang this up on my website, but subparagraph 2 is the best part of the process to nullify any federal action, but it will also be the biggest roadblock to the passage of this bill as written. You see, that subparagraph includes language that does away with the manner in which a lot of good liberty-protecting legislation has died here in Tennessee in the past. Committee votes, especially voice votes, where the chair of the committee makes the sole decision on whether or not a bill advances to the full floor. Instead, based upon this bill, a nullification bill goes to the full floor for a recorded vote. Many members of the General Assembly do not want to be on record as killing good bills or advancing bills that protect or advance special interests. Trust me, there will be a lot of resistance to this bill based only on this paragraph. And it goes on. Again, like I said, I'm going to hang this up on my website. Please give it a chance. Give it a look-see. All in all, folks, this is a good bill, a very good bill. It will go a long way to not only restoring the system of federalism for Tennessee and the central government, it should serve as an example for the rest of the country to take action against the growing tyranny that is coming out of Washington, D.C. As I said, I'll be sharing a copy of this bill on the website for you to download and read. If you do not reside in Tennessee, I would encourage you to share this with your state lawmakers for the districts you live in. If you live in one of those blue states where liberty and freedom are no longer a concern of your state governments, all I can say is get out. Let those states implode under the weight of their tyranny. It isn't safe for you to live there, and especially it's not safe for you to raise a family there. With that, I'm going to take a quick break before I come back for the closing of the show with God's Word. We'll be right back. Again, folks, I want to thank you for joining this week. With that, we will close with this week's wisdom from God's Word, and it comes to us from Luke 11:21. When a strong man, fully armed, guards his own house, his possessions are safe. One of the best ways we can arm ourselves to protect our house, our state, our republic, is to be fully knowledgeable about the Constitution. To completely understand the horizontal and vertical separation of powers built into it. To fully understand the guardrails put against government overreach. We all need to recognize the superior of the sovereign states and the inferior federal government. Each of us needs to support bills in our various state governments, such as the one we discussed on the program today. I want to encourage each of you to go to my blog at libertyleadershipandlies.com and download this bill. Read it. Share it among your neighbors and coworkers. Bring it to your county commission meetings and encourage them to pass resolutions in support of the passage of this or similar legislation at the state level. When we are armed with a Constitution, our possessions, and more importantly, our liberty can be kept safe. As stated in the bill we talked about today, this phrase should leap off the page right at you. And those words are these, quote, our federal founding fathers had derived from both scripture and experience that sinful man could not be trusted to always be virtuous and public-minded. And as such, they did not want undue power to be combined in any branch of government where, if left unchecked, it could become tyrannical, unquote. The only way undue power can be checked is when the people are fully armed with the knowledge and understanding of our republic's founding documents, and to guard our house against the usurpations of liberty by selecting and supporting only those people who choose to be servant, not selfish leaders. Until next week, stand in the arena with me. Reveille, it's time to wake up.